On the Hawk Zone Rundown tonight, we have cap specialist Curtis Allen joining us on the show again. It's the perfect time of year to talk ball with Curtis because we already seen it. The ball's starting to roll. We've had restructures already with Big Cat. Chenna's announcement that's going to happen this week, so things are starting to the wheels are in motion. Curtis is a guy that comes in here and he's going to break it all down with Cat. We're also going to touch on Clint Kubiak's announcement to the media. He had his presser too, so we're going to get Curtis's thoughts on what he thought about that. And a lot more with Curtis Allen. So, and also, guys, we got some cool stuff coming up. Next Monday, we got some big announcements happening with the channel, and Mookie Alexander is actually going to be coming on again to join us for that. So we're going to be unveiling a few things there. So you guys want to make sure not only do you sub to the channel, but make sure you hit the notification bell because that allows you to, when we go live, that you're going to know that's coming up and you're not going to miss anything. So make sure you do that. And another way to support the channel, guys, is buymeacoffee.com. That's it's just another way to support the channel. So real quick, Bryce, I'm fired up here, man, for Curtis. I know we've had him on a couple times. You and him had a good solo one too. It's just awesome with Curtis, man. I'm fired up for this one.
Yeah, it's always good having Curtis on. I'm really interested to see how he's gonna come up with some creative solutions for the Seahawks and how he figures they're going to create some cap space, because right now they're in the red. A lot of fans are worried about, how are they going to get out of there? How are they going to get money to use in free agency? This is why we bring Curtis in at this time of the year, because Curtis has answers for that, and he's going to provide them for us. So super excited for that. The announcements that will be coming up, we'll talk about them a little bit at the end of this show, but really excited to, announce those on Monday, and it's going to be some surprising things, I think, for all of you, and it's really going to help us grow this channel. So we're super excited for those.
Awesome. Well, let's waste no time. On the other side, Curtis Allen.
So y'all can sit here and ask me all the questions y'all want to.
Don't you ever talk about me.
Let's go. It's go time, baby.
I'm just about that action, boss.
You ready to go get it. You just like to do it.
That's what it is.
Defense trying to do that. Pass is caught back in. Can't chase it. What a catch! Jackson Smith and Are you kidding me? Baldwin. Oh my goodness, he caught it.
This is the Hawk Zone Rundown with your hosts Ryan and Bryce.
Curtis Allen joins us again on the Hawk Zone Rundown, cap specialist. Curtis has been on the show a few times now with us. Awesome time of the year, just getting rolling. You already had one restructured contract with Big Cat, and you know what? It's Curtis. It's a great time to have you on. We appreciate you coming on, talking Hawks, talking Clint Kubiak, and just getting into some cap stuff, man.
Yeah, the next month is going to be really fun to see how they build this team. As a cap guy, I always like to see what moves they have in store, what they're making, and how they react to where the market is with things. So with right now, they're over the cap, so we know there's going to be moves coming, and figuring out what they are and how they impact the Hawks is always fun.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why we love having you on here. And but leading things off, because it kind of is going to tie into potentially what moves that they could focus on. New OC Clint Kubiak was announced to the media yesterday. Had his press conference sitting there with Mike McDonald. I loved listening to Clint, man. I took away some key things from that press conference. Just felt like, some things that you felt like this guy is really going to align with what Mike McDonald really wants to do. But did you have a chance to watch the press conference, and what did you take away from it?
Well, I thought it was interesting, as a city that's had Pete Carroll and have really fun, lively press conferences for years, but maybe not great results on the field. It's great to see kind of that the flip side of that, where they're both Mike McDonald and Clint Kubiak are just sort of drier, for lack of a better term, and they're more detail oriented, and they're more direct, and they're not talking about so much about motivating guys and players' feelings and things like that. So it's really refreshing to me. Not that I hated Pete Carroll's style, it's just refreshing to have a nice change. And they're talking about serious nuts and bolts stuff and being detail oriented. So that's kind of my wheelhouse, so I eat that stuff up. As far as impressions, I thought he said a lot of the things that we're looking for. The blogging community, the Twitter community has been looking for, more stoutness in the run game, more reliance on the run game, offensive linemen that are available. I thought that was one of his big talking points with offensive linemen, is having linemen that aren't always banged up and can actually, their toughness comes through working through practice, which is great, because we've had a lot of players kind of like Jamal Adams who talk tough, but when it came time on game day to make a key play, just weren't there. So it's a little bit of more of that understated thought line that I really appreciate. And I like the way he emphasized how, yes, he loves the run. Yes, he wants to run, but there's going to be days where you're going to have to win it with throwing the ball like crazy. Like the Patriots game, week 2, was it, last year? Geno threw like 52 times because there was just no run game that day, and they won. So he's not immune to the idea that, hey, we've got to open it up, or there's some days where you're just going to be running, and the quarterback's going to throw it 18 to 20 times.
Yeah, no, it was interesting listening to Kubiak kind of break it down. Like you said, he definitely is very dry, monotone. Sounds almost like, he looks and sounds almost like the AI version of his father, like Gary. They sound so similar, the way that they talk and all that kind of stuff. The big thing for me with listening to Clint talk was there was a couple key things he said. One, you can tell that he was sold on the fact Geno Smith is going to be here. That was one thing, as well as DK Metcalf, because you heard Mike McDonald even say at one point, like, part of the main purpose of this whole exercise was we need to find someone that's going to be able to maximize what DK does well. And that was the leading point for most of these interviews. And you could also tell, like, amongst all the other stuff that had gone on, listening to Mike McDonald talk about, the process of getting Clint, you could tell Clint was the guy. He was the guy from the beginning. And the fact Mike even said, he goes, I've known him for so long. Like, I've known him and his dad and stuff. And you can tell there's that relationship there. And so I think this is going to bring a really good balance to this team, because I think Clint can really maximize the things that we've wanted this offense to be able to do well. I think he's going to be able to get a screen game going that's actually not predictable and can actually feature the running backs in it, which is something we haven't seen for years. And I think it's going to be good to see how he builds this offensive line. And, you look at some of the additions he's got, John Benton's a huge one. We're talking about a guy that has ample experience of creating great offensive lines, especially within this scheme. You're talking about now they've got Rick Dennison, which sounds like he's going to be hired here probably in the coming days, because he's finally gotten the okay to leave the Saints because they've hired Kellen Moore. That's another huge one. Like, this is what we kind of wanted to see with our next OC after we went off of Grubb, was where are the NFL connections? Where are the ties to getting established NFL coaches in? And now you're seeing that with Clint Kubiak, which is something for me, like when I heard he was an option last year, I was kind of intrigued. Now this year, when it was like, hey, we need to go in this direction, it was like, as soon as his name, it's like, that's the guy, go get that guy. Because Udinski and Fraley, I don't think have those deeper connections, especially even within an offensive scheme and philosophy where Clint comes out of that Kyle Shanahan. And, you look at it, really Mike Shanahan offense, and he knows it probably as well as Kyle does in a lot of ways, because his dad was the guy. We talk about McVay and McVay branching off. Kyle Shanahan's been the one that everyone's always kind of anointed as that offensive genius and the guy that started this whole thing. Really learned it from his dad. And we're talking about the two guys, and Gary and Mike both have sons now that are, significant offensive minds in the NFL.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a lot of commonality there. And I think what's nice is, I want to attribute this to somebody, and I can't remember who said it, but they said Mike McDonald should look for an offensive coordinator who would give him trouble if he was playing against him. A defensive mastermind give me a guy that I would struggle to defend on, and that might be a nice way of thinking about it. So yeah, I think there's a lot of good things that are in line. I think we talk about roster construction, and for sure, John Schneider's work with offensive linemen this last year, has drawn a lot of criticism, and I think that that's fair. There's a lot of fairness to that, but I think there's instances where we can all see during the year that this team was just not well coached. There were game plans that were not put together, I thought, particularly well. The Packer game just came out to me. I was there for that game, and we're just, why won't you run the ball? Run the ball. They were not running the ball. Gino was being harassed all game. And when they started running the ball, it just started chugging, and they finally kind of got in gear a little bit. Then Gino got banged up, and they brought in Sam Howell as the backup, and I think they had him throw like 18 times in a row or something.
Yeah.
And it just made no sense whatsoever. So I think there's a little bit of, the first ingredient is now there, that we have the coaching, we have the guys in place, we have an acknowledgement that, okay, we have to coach with our players' strengths, and we have to coach to the game and how the game is going to turn out. And you said it well. I think that's just NFL experience. He's been in so many different stops. I think there's, it's not great that, he's 5 teams in 5 years, but the upside is exposure to all different players, different organizations, different mindsets. And I think he brings a lot of good things to us. And like you said, some of the guys he's bringing with him worked with his dad. So it's not just, these are, the sharp young guys that are 22 years old and, can barely shave and are trying to make a name for themselves. These are guys that are gray beards. They've been around for a while. And I think that's a good thing, especially with Mike McDonald as coach.
Yeah, I think you talk about it too. With Grubb, I think we all liked the hire initially because you said, okay, it's outside the box. He had this explosive offense at Washington. So let's see how that transitions to the NFL. Football's football. But obviously he, just wasn't ready. And you bring up the point, just not coach well in a lot of games. Maybe not just on Grubb, but you're talking about Mike McDonald as well, first year head coach. So a lot, a whole new regime, a lot of new coaches. So I think, with this hire, I think not only Kubiak seems like the guy, but just all that experience, 5 teams in 5 years. But you look at what he's done, right? What he's got out of guys like Kirk Cousins and Jefferson when he was in Minnesota there. And then even when he was the passing game coordinator in San Francisco, Brock, they go to the NFC Championship with Brock Purdy. So there's a lot of things you can take away from that just recently that you can say, okay, you know what? Look at what we have here. He aligns with Mike McDonald. So like you said, that first ingredient is in place. But, you're looking at Kubiak's approach. How do you think that maybe aligns with, say, some of the roster strategy building? We're going to get into the cap stuff too, because, obviously we'll get into what they're able to do, maybe free agency wise and stuff too. But with his approach, does it change how, John's going to construct this roster a little bit?
Well, I think that everybody, and they're right, has been cluing in on what he said about needing an elite center. And then he kind of stopped and said, well, or a very good center. And then right after that, he acknowledged that the salary cap, you can't just buy anybody you want. You have to work around things. And I think that shows some insight there on his part, that you don't always get what you want when it comes to a roster. And he's not, he's got layers above him that's going to help, make decisions about the roster. I would think they'd be in alignment though on finding that top center. So, the obvious pick is Drew Dahlman in Atlanta. He's coming off a rookie contract. He's got great PFF grades. He's a center. And I think what they really want in this scheme as a change is a center that can call the protections and kind of run the offensive line. And I don't think Geno Smith is incapable or does not have a fast enough mind to do that stuff. But why not take that off his plate and let him do his reads, his steps, and his drops, and not worry about the pre-snap stuff. Because I think there has been times where they've had to delay game penalties, they had to burn a timeout because the defense is switching around and there's some confusion and trying to get the playoff and things like that. So there may be some benefit there. So I think I wouldn't say it's a guarantee, but I'm pretty certain that they're going to go shopping for a center. And that, Drew Dalman is probably the top pick as far as a zone blocking guy. So I think they would do that. The thing that I also think they need to look at is getting a blocking tight end into the system, whether that's free agency or in the draft when that comes. It's funny, Bryce, you and I were talking in preseason, and I was all over the place, honestly, about AJ Barner. I was like, he doesn't have much. I haven't seen much of anything from him, either blocking or in the game. And he's known for blocking and not known for being a good receiver. And then he does the exact opposite during the season. He's not a great blocker, and he turns out to be a nice little guy that can slip into spots for Geno Smith to throw some passes to. So that's as yet undetermined whether he can be a true blocking tight end, a real wide tight end that can just line up and just take the guy on the other side of the field. So I think that's probably going to be on the wish list at some point or another. So in my mind, I think those are the two things. It'd be nice to go out and buy Trey Smith from Kansas City and, see if there's a left guard out there that they can buy as well. But I just don't think that's going to be their process. I think they're going to work with what they have, and they're probably going to draft someone in the top 3 rounds as well.
It's interesting you say that, because that was the one thing that I took away from Kubiak's, even his non-press conference related, hits, his radio hits.
Mm-hmm.
Multiple times when they asked about the O-line, his first word out of his mouth was free agent. Then it was draft. Then it was working with the guys who got here to develop. And, you kind of figure out throughout time the way that coaches talk sometimes when they're not accustomed to being in front of the mic all the time and doing these press conferences. They don't really think about their answers and how they're going to be, they're just giving you this. They're not going to give you everything, but they're going to give you tidbits. The fact in 3 different occasions he alluded to free agency with the O-line and getting an elite center and then having to backtrack that a bit. Like, you can tell where the mind of frame is going here. And I think they will. I think they're going to go after a free agent center and bring someone in. And I think Olu and Sundell are going to battle it out for the number 2 role. And I think that's going to be honestly an interesting camp battle, because we're going to see who out of those 2 is going to stick. And the fact that the one thing, Kubiak did allude to in his press conference was the fact that, hey, like, we're going to come in with an outside zone running scheme. That's my bread and butter. And yes, we'll tailor it to our team's strength, and maybe we run some pin pull and some gap, but this is how this offense works. And saying that John Benton and, these guys are going to have a say in it, and Mac Brown and the tight ends. And I think you're right. I think tight end's another position of need for this team more so. And like he talked about Noah Fant, I don't know if Noah Fant fits this properly, especially at his cap hit, which we'll get into.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting. I think of all people that is going to benefit the most besides Geno Smith in this offense, because I think they're going to move Geno, which is something I've been begging for, like get him on boots, get him outside the pocket and use his legs, is Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker is built more for an outside zone running scheme. I think you're going to see that from him. Is now you're allowing him to actually use his athleticism. You're setting the blocks to the edge and letting him go. You're not asking him to do things he's not necessarily good at. So it'll be interesting to see how this all comes together. But the other thing that was interesting is who they all retain. Jake Peetz is back. A lot of these guys, that we thought maybe Peetz would be gone. I think this is because Peetz has familiarity with the scheme, and that's why they kept him around. And maybe he's still the guy in waiting. He just wasn't ready this time around, depending on if Kubiak moves on. But I don't think he's going to, because, and I'm not trying to be rude, when you go to be a head coach, there's certain parts of you that has to have a personality. Like we've seen Mike McDonald's come out a bit. I don't think you get that from Clint Kubiak, and I think Clint Kubiak's going to be one of those guys that's just going to be a long-time OC, and I'm okay with that if he runs a good offense.
That works good for me too. Yeah, exactly. I think the one and done hot point like Kellen Moore is, man, that's tough. So you've got to be on your game all the way through, because he might even take half his staff to New Orleans with him. So, like they said, the Eagles will have their third coordinator in 3 years, or fourth in 4 years, something like that. So yeah, that's a feat to be able to keep the team together and do well with that. But
Yeah,
I agree 100% with what you said about Ken Walker, though. He actually mentioned Ken Walker in the passing game, and he has been severely underutilized in the passing game. And in one of our camp streams, Bryce, we talked about that. I said he's lining up outside and he's beating a corner. He's not beating, a linebacker who might be a little bit stone-footed or something. But no, he's taking corners, he's taking safeties off the line, and he's running good routes. He's not just running this basic route. So I think, I don't want to say an Alvin Kamara role, but I mean, there's definite potential for far more there.
yeah. Hey, well, the only thing I will say about the personality thing is Bill Belichick did pretty good having not much of a personality there in that little dynasty run. So you never know. The thing is, at the end of the day, man, Clint knows football, and
Yeah.
that's what you can get excited about. So, but hey, let's get into some more. Let's get into some cap stuff here, because people. I think the average Seahawk fan, they know, okay, that there is a cap, that these players' salaries, but the average guy really doesn't understand how it all works. Like, especially the whole thing all year was, cut DK, and he's making so much money, and then well, wait a second, having someone like you on, so well, wait, if we extend him, you're actually saving money, just those little things like that. So let's get into the cap here, because we're talking about you know possibly signing a center, maybe a guard, but where's that money coming from, right? Where are the Seahawks sitting right now with the cap? Because we know that right now they're not working with a lot of money. The first restructure was earlier last week with Big Cat, and then Chenna, we're supposed to hear kind of any time now what's going to happen there. So things are starting to roll a little bit, right? So why don't we get into some cap stuff? I know you put together some things, and we can talk about that right now. Bryce is pulling up. So why don't you walk us through this and what it all means for the Seahawks here? I mean, right now, because we are in the offseason.
Yeah. So what happens is with the cap on just a big general level, having a lot of cap room, you think, oh, great, we're really in great shape. Well, that means you don't have a lot of high quality players that you have to pay. It means you've got a lot of young players, and maybe they're good, maybe they're not so good. You're still developing them. Not having a lot of cap could mean the exact opposite. You've got a lot of good players, and you've got to find a way to make money, to cut money in there and get some more cap room. So it's not necessarily a case of over the cap bad, under the cap good. It's just sort of all of us understanding where we are in the stream of time and what the decisions the Seahawks have to make are. So I just put this this is a bare bones kind of a look at what we have right now. So after restructuring Leonard Williams, right now, as of today, per OT's over the cap, we have $13 million over the cap. So what's going to happen is, in about a month, the league year starts, and the Seahawks must be under the cap at that point. So they have to find $13 million in cap room between now and then, which of course they will. It won't be an issue for them. And then I put some of the moves that I think are coming down the wire between now and March 12th, that are, I don't say they're dead on obvious, but I think they're coming down, and they're going to be happening in one form or another. So Rayshon Jenkins, I think we can cut him loose. I don't know how you guys feel. I felt like his, as a strong safety, his run defense was not good last year. He was taking bad angles. He was banged up, and as well as Julian Love showed up as a off the grid signing. Rayshon Jenkins wasn't that much. So they've got Kobe Bryant there. They've got Jarek Reed. They've got the draft. That Nick Emenwanori might be a pick at 18 if he falls that far, and that might be a good use of their resources there. And then we've got Draymond Jones. I think it's time to make a decision on him, whether it's time to cut or trade him. The Seahawks have always kind of been like a let's give him one more year kind of a team. I feel like last year was that year, and with Mike McDonald. And last year at this time, they cut Jamal Adams and they cut Quandre Diggs loose, along with Brian Monet and Nick Ballore. So I don't see them, having any real issues with maybe moving on from Draymond Jones. And I don't know, maybe there's a future 5th or 6th round pick if somebody wants to pick up his contract at this point. And then I kind of put in a placeholder. I put in extend Geno Smith. I think that seems to be the way things are going. I think the only thing that would prevent them from extending Geno Smith is what his camp's demands are right now. I don't see them spending absolute top dollar on Geno Smith, a $40 or $50 million a year contract. I can see something very similar to what they did in 2023. A 3-year deal, outs each year, some performance incentives, and a raise. He's earned a raise. So they're up against the wall a little bit because March 17th, as I wrote on there, there's a $16 million bonus. There's a roster bonus, and then those escalators that he earned, those are non-guaranteed. They don't have to pay those if they cut him or trade him or renegotiate his contract before then. So OTC says you can pick up $21 million in an extension. I just put 15 million down just so we have a kind of a base number. Sometimes the Seahawks don't take the max. They like to eat a little bit in the first year and free up the second or third year with that. Then I've got extending Ernest Jones, very similar to the Patrick Queen deal, 3 years, $40 million, and the first year cap hit is $7 million. I think this is like the Leonard Williams deal last year. They traded midseason for a player. They knew he was going to be a free agent. They really liked him, and they gave up good capital for him. So, and everything has been going swimmingly. And I think he said he wants to be a Seahawk, and then his agents planted a little, he's going to test the market. And I think the next day he said, no, I want to be here. And I think his agents probably got after him about that. But, that works to their advantage. And I think a middle linebacker of his quality is probably more important to the defense with Mike McDonald than it was the Pete Carroll defenses in that aspect. So I expect them to get something done before he hits the market, or maybe a day or two after he hits the market. It'll be signed down. And then I put down rework Tyler Lockett instead of cutting him loose. They can pick up $17 million if they cut him loose. I just said rework. He has a $5.3 million roster bonus. If you take that and give him the minimum veteran salary, you pick up about $10.5 million. I feel like with his comments, the way he felt like he was a team player this last year and sacrificed some of his touches or targets in a way, and them not unequivocally ruling out bringing him back, I think he might be back. And honestly, that might be my sentimentality coming through a little bit. As a cap guy, you have to be cold and hard and, make tough decisions when you talk about this stuff. And I have a soft spot for Tyler Lockett. So I think he'll stay in some way or another. So as you can see, we've got $21 million of cap room when it comes to the new league year. So they're in great shape. And there's other ways they can recover cap room. One of the ways that I'm kind of vacillating back and forth on is with Draymond Jones. So basically the story is Friday, tomorrow, day after tomorrow, $6 million of his salary is guaranteed. And that makes them basically, if they let that lapse, he's on the team this year, unless somebody wants to come and trade for him, which I don't think anyone would at this point. But if they cut him before then, it's $8 million of a gain on the cap. And I didn't put him on this list simply because the last 3 or 4 years, the Seahawks have structured their contracts with some of their veteran players this way to guarantee 5 years after or 5 days after the Super Bowl. Quandre Diggs, Jamal Adams, Tyler Lockett. There was a couple others that they had in there that I'm blanking on. They always let them lapse. They never cut those players before, even when it felt like it was pretty obvious, like Jamal Adams, Quandre Diggs, some of those players previous to 2023 or 2024. So I feel like they may be saying with Draymond Jones, let's let this ride out a little bit. He's so good in run defense. You can always use more pass rushers. They may even reason that, he wasn't a banged up guy. He just got that low blow on the knee in preseason, and that kind of banged up his whole
Chenna, Curtis?
I'm sorry. I was talking about
Chenna, yeah.
Chenna,
Right.
yeah. I was like, wait a minute, low
Sorry
blow.
about that.
Like, hold on. Yeah, so
Sorry
you're talking
about
about Chenna if they keep him, because it's a $6 million injury guarantee or something for him.
Friday, right? That's the
Yes, correct. Yeah. Who did I say? Did I say Draymond?
Yeah,
it's all good.
Okay. No, yeah. I meant Chenna. Yeah. So I think he's got he'll be a guy that they may think about hanging on to. And I think tomorrow John Schneider's will be his first radio day. And I would hope that'll be the first one of the early things that they ask him. And he may not even have to say, yes or no, but we're looking forward to playing with Chenna this year or something like that. So there's that. There's some money there. They've got Roy Robinson Harris. They can pick up $6 million. I'm not sure if they want to let him go just yet. When they brought him over, their defense started clicking and coming together, and their run defense really improved. Is it worth $6 million? I'm not sure at this point, but I think there's a good chance he might stay. And then, like you said, Noah Fant. His role is yet to be determined how we go through there. So, in other words, I kept a little bit of money back and just wanted to kind of look through what we have here. So if you scroll down a little bit, I picked up Drew Dahlman. I gave him a 4-year, $55 million contract. Lloyd Cushenberry got 4 years, $50 million last year. So, with the cap bump, 4 years, 55 seems about right. That's a $7 million or so cap hit in 2025. I think they'll bring Jaron Reed back. I think he's a guy that's a good leader. He's a guy that once or twice a year, he has a game where he cannot be contained and just bust the interior up. And I think he's good for a lot of things there. And he's reasonable. Last year was 2 years, 9. So 2 years, $8 million is an easy one. And then this summer, we've got to pay our draft picks. It's not much, $3.2 million. And then we extend DK Metcalf. There's about 3 years, $95 million. That's just a guess. And I didn't have them picking up the total amount, but they pick up about $12 million in salary there. I think his last extension was right before training camp, the first extension that he got. So I don't think they can count on extending him right away. There isn't a deadline for him. But like you mentioned, Bryce, the way they're talking about him, he's going to be part of the team this year. And I think that was proven last year when they restructured his contract and opened up some cap money. So it's just too punitive to move on from him this year. It'd be like $21 million or something, dead cap. And then down at the bottom in September, we've got about $10 million we got to have in our piggy bank for the practice squad. and that leaves us with a surplus of about $11 million that we can spend with and we can play with a little bit. Now, again, that's not definitive. That's not anything that's I'm making a crystal ball prediction. I'm just sort of outlining where we're at, what we have to consider. And then we've got questions like our rookie class of 2022 is going into their last year.
Yeah.
So do we want to talk to Ken Walker, Reek Woolen, Abe Lucas, Charles Cross, Boye Mafe? We've got decisions to make there if we want to do that. But that can work. That can go into the fall and winter as well. So those are some of the ideas. And like you guys mentioned, there's room to go get a real good center, and there's room to, if they really want to, tighten their belt a little bit, to spend a little bit there. So it's not one of those things where they're overdrawn and the checkbook just sitting in the drawer. They've got ways to make the cap room for themselves, and they could do all kinds of things if they want to. They could, if they really wanted to go in, they could pick up another $25 million for 2025 by restructuring Chenna. They could restructure Tyler Lockett. They could do some things if they really wanted to make a splash, and maybe if they wanted to go get Myles Garrett or something like that. It's within their reach if there's even a deal to be had out there. So they could do it. It's just a matter of your principles and how much do you want it, and how do you put this all together. But that's the fun part, isn't it?
Hey, Curtis, just real quick, touch on the DK thing, right? Because that's like feels like there's two camps, right? And there's those ones that you just threw the 95 million out there. So for people watching, they're just like, man, that is a lot of money for they'll throw it like he's a top whatever receiver, and he's how does the 3-year 95 and in the whole, when we're sticking with cap talk and all this kind of stuff, how does it, you not only he's a good receiver obviously, but how does it make sense by giving him that 3-year extension for the Hawks?
Yeah, I think we've seen it make sense. Like it was mentioned in the press conference, that one of their questions for Kubiak was, how do you deploy DK Metcalf and how do you get him involved? And one of them said something like, being a really expensive decoy is not okay. You've just got to throw him the ball when he's got coverage on him. So there's that hidden factor that we all have to look closely at, of how he affects the defense. And I think there's a little bit more of, if they're running the ball well and perhaps the protection is a little bit better, there's times where you can just take over the game and just throw him the ball, and he'll have one of those games that's like a 14 catch, 125 yard, 2 or 3 touchdown game that just takes the game over in that way. So,
but you're not going to cut, like, as far as like money's concerned, like, because listen, no, I'm in agreement. I think he's a stud. Like, I just, he's on this roster. I think there's no question. But, some people might say, well, will you save money cutting him? But I think what you're saying, like the two options are either extend or you trade, right?
Pretty much,
as
yes.
The money's concerned.
Yeah. I mean, there's just no way that they're going to cut DK Metcalf this year. And, they pick up $10 million. But it's one of those scenarios where I think they'd be like, oh, we're going to go get 3 or 4 backup offensive guards and plug them into the system for our $10 million savings. And all of a sudden we're going, oh, wow, Jackson Smith-Njigba's getting all the defensive attention, and he can't work and find his way open. So it's very careful what you wish for. And if they want it, the trouble with the wide receiver market is really, I don't think there's a first round pick in trade to be had with DK Metcalf, unless somebody's completely enamored. It's not there, but it is expensive. That's part of the game. And at some point you have to pay your weapons. You've got to have weapons on your team. You've got to pay them. And I think, a DK Metcalf contract, like a 3-year extension, grants that. And then when it's time to pay Jackson Smith and Jigba, they have options. If they've developed another wide receiver, they can move on from Metcalf. And he's still, at that point, he'll be like 29. So, and if he's a Julio Jones, Julio's best years were 28 to 30, age 28 to 30. And then he had 3 more good years, very good years. And then he started declining after that. So I think the longevity and the contract length is not too much of a trouble. You acquire a player like Jamal Adams, and he's always banged up, and he's got to be used a certain way, and things like that. I think DK Metcalf is the polar opposite of a Jamal Adams. He's gonna be there. He's gonna play. He's gonna be out there blocking in the run game and just mowing guys down. He's not a diva that way, and I think he has value well into his 30s. So I don't see a trouble with an extension.
Well, and here's the other thing with DK, and this is something I think, if they're going into these, into this off-season hiring of their OC, and that's one of the focal point questions is how are you going to maximize DK? Why even bring that up in theory in a lot of ways when you're doing these interviews with these OCs? Because you're not going to go to the OC and be like, yeah, I want to tell us how you're going to maximize DK and then turn around and trade him when the guy's anticipating having DK Metcalf on his offense. Like the guy's not going to probably take the job if he knows you're going to get rid of DK.
It's so bait and switch.
Yeah, you're not going to do that because it's not going to cause good faith between the coaching staff of the organization. So that's why I think, a lot of Seahawks fans need to get their head wrapped around DK is going to be here. Geno is going to be here. And the way they're talking even about Geno is like Geno's going to be here for the next 2 seasons at least. I still don't think that stops them from taking a quarterback. I think they're going to want to take a guy in this year's draft. But with DK too, the other thing, look at what Clint Kubiak did with Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. Justin Jefferson had 1,600 yards his rookie season in Clint Kubiak's offense.
Mm-hmm.
He knows how to get receivers open, whether it's Justin Jefferson, Chris Olave. He has a way of doing it. Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel when he was the pass game coordinator for the 49ers. Like, he knows how to scheme things up and get guys open. So I think he's going to come in here with a plan to use JSN and use DK. Now, the other one in that receiving core, though, is I don't think Tyler's going to be here just based on how Mike McDonald was talking in the press conference.
Mm-hmm.
When he got asked the question, hey, what's going on with Tyler? And he's like, we're working through that right now. I think it's a situation of, hey, if you're going to come back, it's going to be on a significantly reduced salary, and you could still lose your job in camp if someone comes in and we think they're better and can give us more in this system. Or, hey, Tyler, there's no room for you here. We're going in a different direction. We're going to give you the Doug Baldwin treatment where you can retire or whatever, or we cut you and you go find someone else. Because he says he wants to play, but I don't know too many teams, like, honestly, and I know people may not like me saying this, but as much as Tyler goes, well, I sacrificed last year. How often did you think when Tyler Lockett was playing and in the offense, did you find him an effective mover of coverage like he used to be, where teams would put the safety over top? It didn't happen. Yeah. He averaged like less than 4 catches a game most games. Like, he was lucky if he got 2 for like maybe 30 yards. He steeply went off a cliff last year. And you can say, oh, JSN emerged, but there's the same thing happened to Jermaine Kearse with Tyler Lockett. Tyler took Jermaine's job in that offense. He was the better player. JSN was the better player last year than Tyler Lockett. And I think it's time that I love Tyler. I love everything he's done. But you got to make those decisions sometime to move on and put your team in the right direction and not hang on to aging players that are going to eat up some of your salary cap in a roster spot from a young guy that can come be an impact player.
Yeah. And I think there's definitely a conversation there to be had. Like I said, I gave in my little spreadsheet there, I gave him the league minimum, veteran minimum contract, and let him have his roster bonus, as a thank you to where he is. You never know. He may want to go to Las Vegas and play with Pete Carroll there. So I could almost see just a, hey, handshake, we'll let you go. go to play, or hey, Vegas, give us a 7th round pick in 2027 or something to make this official. So yeah, I agree with that. There's definitely room for that. And yeah, I've been asking like Albert Breer, how are they going with the Geno Smith negotiations, because I'm sure there's some insider information going along, but in 2023, he signed right after the end of the scouting combine, like the day after the scouting combine ended. And as we all know, the scouting combine is where everybody gets together and colludes like crazy about value, where players at free agency and trade value and so on and so forth. So I expect a similar timeline with that, and that'll give us, I don't know, 10 days or so before the league year starts to figure out where we're at. If he's not extended by a couple of days after the combine, I'm going to start wondering where they're at, if there's trouble with coming together on an agreement, and then all of a sudden they're going to have to start quickly looking at options and see where they're at and how much they really do want to pay him.
Yeah, that's going to be the interesting thing. I think everyone just thinks, oh, it's 2-year extension, it's done. But where is Seattle going to have a hard number, and are they going to be close to it? That's going to be interesting to see. We all think, oh, Geno just he'll accept a 2-year deal no matter what. But you look around at some of the guys that have gotten paid that you're like, Dak, Lawrence, Tua, like, these guys aren't guys to really write home about, and they're getting paid a lot of money. Geno might be looking at say, hey, look, man, some of my sure the red zone stuff, but I was in some Ryan Grubb offense that expected me to sit back and throw the ball out of shotgun like 80% of the time. It just wasn't fair for me, and I still had a over 70% completion rate. Like, who knows where those talks are? Like you said, it'll be interesting to see. I think we all sit here and with Kubiak thinking, yeah, more than likely they're going to try to get that done. A 2-year deal makes sense, but this is why it's like the best time of the year, right? Because there's just still those unknowns. But hey, speaking of some unknowns, we touched on the center, possible free agents. What other targets do you think Seattle's going to go after in the free agent market? And what do you think some areas of other needs are, offense or defensive side of the ball?
Well, I think, like we said, tight end. There's a great tight end draft class, and honestly, it's a weak tight end free agent market. There's a bunch of players that are pass catchers but not great blockers, and to be honest, it feels like we've got 2 of those right now. So they'll probably look to the draft for that. There was a guy I was looking at. He was what is his name? He's a tight end, Stone Smart for the Chargers. He's an interesting guy that's just sort of gotten under the radar a little bit. He's a tight end. He's buried on their depth chart. They brought in Will Dissly and another tight end, former quarterback. He came in and said, hey, what can I do? And he made the roster, and he got playing time as a rookie tight end. So he's 6'4", he's 220, 230, and he's got athletic qualities, but is supposedly, according to reports, his blocking is coming along. So I wonder if he might be a project. He's a free agent this year, definitely under the radar because he hasn't played much with in the Harbaugh offense and before. He got a little bit more time in the Harbaugh offense. Will Dissly was hurt for a while, so there's that. I think they might look at something like that. I don't know, Farrell Brown. I struggle with him. That a couple of plays where he mowed guys down were really fun, but I don't know if that's worth more than a veteran minimum contract bringing him back. So that's where I think there's definitely some bulking up there to do. I'm kind of interested in what they do with linebackers, because are Tyrese Knight and then Ernest Jones the guys, or are they still competing? I like Tyrese Knight a lot. I like him a lot. I think he did very well this year. Bryce, again, when we were talking about camp reports, he got tons of time with the number ones in camp because Baker and Dotson were always banged up in camp, and he was always the presumptive number one in camp. And then he kind of sat back down when they came along, and then when they got booted, bang, he took off and he looked fantastic. So a Mike McDonald defense has to have linebackers. So I think they'll look at things. The Bengal linebacker that just said, I want to be traded. I would love to see if they would look into that and see if there's a deal to be made just to get some more depth. He's an excellent player, but I said on Twitter today, as an alternative, if they can't lock Ernest Jones down, see what they can do to go get him. So I think safety is a sneaky need. There's an area there that could be utilized and allow Witherspoon to truly be a weapon type player that could be used there. There's some safeties out. There's always some good safeties out there that are available, and I think they have to be looking at edge rushers too. It wouldn't shock me if they have Boye Mafe, they have Derek Hall. I think they'll have Chenna. A fourth would be great. They might go for a project like Joe Tryon from Tampa Bay, first round pick who's just not panned out yet, but great physical tools. There might be there. I would be interested to see what they would do in the trade market this fall, if they have some cap room and they see something that's available. I don't know why. John Schneider's not great with big free agent signings. He's brilliant when it comes to the in-season trade. I don't know why. We've got Jadeveon Clowney, well, almost in season, before season. They went and got Ernest Jones, they got Leonard Williams, they got Carlos Dunlap. Not all of them have been home runs, but a lot of them have been very, very good trades. So, he always talks about having some cap room to play with in the fall. And I think there's an opportunity there to, just to see how things shake out a little bit.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think safety is actually a sneaky need because you got to remember Kobe Bryant's actually on the last year of his deal too. So he's a guy that adds that 2022 class we're talking about of players. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with Kobe, if they give him some sort of extension depending on how he plays. But I think there's a good chance Seattle takes in their first 4 rounds. I think they take an interior lineman. I think they take an edge. I think they take a safety, and I think they take a quarterback. I think those are 4 areas I think they go after. I don't know the particular order that ends up happening, but I think those are your 4 first picks you'll see. I think later on they may go for a receiver because they can probably get one later on that could come in and fill that role. And the thing is, too, with Kubiak's system, tight ends play a big role. He talked about it on his couple of his different appearances, how you got to have tight ends. Like, they are so crucial to how this scheme works. I think there's a chance, like you're talking about the kid out of San Diego there, or LA, the Chargers. He brought up Taysom Hill, who was kind of this gadgety tight end, H-back type. And, I think they're going to need to have someone kind of like that's a little bit more of an athletic tight end than even what they have on their roster. So it'll be interesting to see how they shape this roster through free agency. But that breakdown you gave us, Curtis, was really great on how that, cap situation all plays out.
Yeah. There's going to be more to come. I mean, the fun thing about the roster and the cap is you've seen my threads on Twitter. It's like every time there's something that happens, here's the nine things that it'll affect on the roster of the team. So it's just a rippling effect. So yeah, I agree with what you're saying. And if I can put a plug in, I'd like Luke Lachey from Iowa. That's the guy I want. I mean, he's just all muscle. He's guts, and he'll catch a ball for you too. So I can see him in the 3rd round, maybe the low 2nd if they trade down. So I think he'd be a great fit for the Seahawks offense at tight end.
Yeah, awesome stuff. Hey, Curtis, give us your final thoughts of just the future outlook for this roster and team and just moving forward with Mike McDonald now going into his second year, and feels like you a little more confident now with Clint Kubiak and the guys he's brought over, and how this roster's set right now. Yeah, what's your future outlook, and how you feeling?
Well, I feel like last year, the games, well, every year, the games are really a discovery process of what work you've done in the offseason. They came into the offseason last year, and a lot of their work in the offseason was not of good quality. They came in with, they signed, I think it was Nick Harris. They had Olu at center. Nah, they're not good enough. So we've got to go grasp at Connor Williams right before the season starts. And that didn't work out. They drafted Christian Haynes. They couldn't find a way to get him going and get him into the lineup. That didn't work out. The two linebackers they picked up in free agency, they didn't work out. Laken Tomlinson, he started a lot of games, but it's fair to say he didn't work out either. But what I loved about this organization and in this new era is they're not afraid to cut bait and go through stuff. I appreciate everything that Pete Carroll's done for the team. I love that he has loyalty to the guys, but that first few couple of years, he was cutting everybody. You don't play, you're cut. And that mentality needed to come back. And that even came down to the coordinators. They just couldn't get the game together. And so I really like what they're doing. It's not that they make mistakes, is that they're not lingering and laying on those mistakes. So I think the second year with a full off season, I think the defense should take markedly steps forward. And I think that'll be a strength of this team. When the defense can't stop anyone, what does it matter what kind of an offense you have? Really, if you don't have Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen on your team, it just makes it so much harder. And as I've said, Mike McDonald is a genius. He was a great defensive coach. I mean, he is a great defensive coach. But the last year in Baltimore, his defense took the field with 88 snaps where they were behind on the scoreboard. So yeah, it's easy to be a good defense when your offense is rocking and rolling. So I think the discovery process this year will be, how soon can they teach these guys the offense? And Clint Kubiak has owned up to that. He said, we've got to be good teachers. It's all about April through June. And so I'm liking what I'm hearing. I struggle to say they're gonna snap in place in week one. They're going to be great on offense. There's going to be struggles and so on and so forth. But I think there's a lot of good things to like going forward about the team. I agree with you, Bryce. I think a quarterback is fait accompli for this draft. There's going to be 3 or 4 guys that they like, and they're going to be finally in their range. Like last year, they had 6 quarterbacks before they even got on the board. The year before, when they got Witherspoon, their 3 picks probably that they like were gone. So they just haven't been able to find one. And I think there's going to be 3 guys that they like, and they're going to feel the benefit of being able to groom those guys along and then get the benefit of that rookie quarterback contract in the next couple of years. So I think there's a lot of good things to look forward to.
I do as well. And I'll plug this right now. There's 3 quarterbacks for me that have really kind of started to separate themselves for the Seahawks. One is, now that we've got Clint Kubiak in place, Kyle McCord. I think he fits a lot of what the Kubiak Shanahan scheme requires you to do. The other one's Will Howard. And the third guy that might surprise some people, I think he might be able to get a little bit later, but he may rise. And Todd McShay's super high on him now too, and someone that I've actually grown quite fond of after watching his tape is Tyler Shuck out of Louisville.
Okay.
He's a guy to take a look at, and he's a guy that I think you're going to see come up because he's got all the intangibles and probably more of a skill set ready for the NFL than most people. And I think he's going to be an interesting one to keep an eye on. So keep an eye on Tyler Shuck through this process and see what he does.
Yeah. And I'm interested this year. I caught something, and Bryce, you probably caught it better than I did, is what does it take to score in the red zone. And Kubiak answered, the quarterback has to have quick feet, make quick decisions, and it's all about timing. And I'm not saying Geno Smith is terrible at those things, but his footwork needs improvement. I don't know what you think, what you see as a quarterback coach or quarterback, but there's a lot of flat-footed throws at times, and some of that, yes, it's the pressure. But I think if he gets those things worked out, watch out.
I think the biggest thing for that, and where I think you saw the drop off this year, especially compared to the 2 years under Waldron, and at Kubiak again, he said it in his press conference, was when it comes to throwing the football and the concepts, it comes to the feet being tied to the routes. And I think that's something in Ryan Grubb's offense, because he came from college, it wasn't there. Everything was out of shotgun. So there's no footwork attached to it. And you watch Brock Purdy and you watch Matthew Stafford and these guys that have played in the system, they drop back from under center and make throws. And then the concept plays itself out of gun at points, so they already know the timing. And that's where I think you'll see the better of Geno come back out with his footwork, because he does actually have good feet. It's just I don't think it was emphasized in the passing game last year based on how the route concepts were done. I think you'll see it now, because a lot of what Kubiak and Shanahan's system is, it's timing. It's timing on routes to know where your eyes, very much from the Bill Walsh tree, which is where Mike Shanahan learned this offense and evolved it from. So it'll be an interesting thing to see how this year goes on. But Ryan, you got anything else?
No, yeah, no, Curtis, awesome. Like, I love the breakdown. I think this is great for everybody to sort of see, just the numbers. It gives us a clear picture moving forward in this offseason to say, look, you kind of go through your list that you went through and say, listen, we can be okay. We can still go get that center, go get maybe a guard, depending what they do, and then address some of the other stuff in the draft. But, I don't think, like you said, you talk about an edge. I think we agree with everything you're saying, and see what they can't do everything, but I think as Mike McDonald and his defense starts rolling a little bit, I think we're getting more confident. And then with Clint, you don't have to blow people out of the water. Just be that balanced offensive attack that Mike won it last year, and we were all pulling our hair out, or whatever. So it's gonna be interesting. We don't have to set the world on fire here, but before we let you go, where can people find your stuff? And also, you mentioned quarterback. Just give me a name. Who's the guy out of the draft that you like? Just give me one name, and then let everyone know where people can find your stuff, what you got going on.
I like Quinn Ewers. I know he's been banged up. I know he hasn't played well at times, but I think that he's got a high profile. I love the easy throw, easy at arm strength, and he has work to do. There's no doubting about it. I wouldn't want him to be a week one starter for the Seahawks, but I like a lot of what I see out of him, and he's definitely proven to have success at the college level. So I like him a lot. He's kind of my crush for the draft, but yeah. So, but if Kubiak he brings out the running game and is successful with that just makes your quarterback even better. So yeah, I just wanted to throw one stat out because I was doing a little homework before the 4-week stretch where the New Orleans Saints had all their players together. They weren't all banged up. They converted third downs at a 53% rate.
Mm-hmm.
They were rocking and rolling, but half of those conversions were in the running game. So if he can tap into that, I think we've really got something here. So yeah, there's definitely got. So I've my Twitter handle is at Curtis93969. We're at SeahawksDraftBlog.com. I've got an article coming out that might raise some eyebrows here later this week, an unconventional look at a solution for the Seahawks at quarterback. So look for that. And I beg you, give it a full read before you say, no way. It's going to raise some eyebrows. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, awesome stuff. I'm definitely going to read that, because I think, the QB thing, man, it's still a thing to talk about, and I think it's going to continue to be. So, guys, go over and check out Curtis's work. Awesome stuff, awesome insight, Curtis. We really appreciate you coming on again. And I'm sure we'll be talking with you again in the future here.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Curtis. Guys, that was Curtis Allen joining us again on the show. Third or fourth time we've had Curtis on. It's always awesome, man. It just gives us a whole different insight. I think it just, like I said at the end there, just gives people a clear picture of what to expect in the offseason. Because, everyone can have their wish list and go get Trey Smith and let's get 3 guards in free agency. But, wait a second. How are we going to do that? What does re-signing DK to an extension mean for the team and the money? And where, all that stuff. Curtis comes on, breaks it down. That's why we love having him on, man. Great episode with Curtis.
Yeah, it's always good to have Curtis on, and I definitely love his view of the cap. He brings solutions to it, and sometimes they're unconventional, but when you're in that role and someone that dives in the cap like Curtis does, you have to be able to think outside the box and find solutions that way. So it's always interesting to have that conversation, and I always love his insight as well on just potential free agents and how he sees them fitting into this team, because just outside of being a cap specialist and understanding the numbers side of it, Curtis is a diehard Seahawks fan, and he sees similar things that we do all the time when it comes to this team and the issues that are presenting to this team all the time. So it was always a good conversation.
Yeah, awesome stuff, guys. Make sure you go over and check out Curtis's work. He's got great stuff, and like I said, I can't wait to dive into that quarterback article he's got too, because that sounds pretty interesting. Interesting read. So, guys, that's it for us tonight. But we got some cool stuff coming up. You guys want to tune in next Monday? We got some announcements coming up. Mookie Alexander is going to be joining us for a pretty big announcement for us and the show. And we're going to unveil a couple of other things too. So you guys want to tune in for that, but make sure you hit the notification button, because that way you get notified when we're about to come on, especially when we're going live with stuff. Gives you guys a little heads up to get on there. So, and guys, make sure you go down, hit the subscribe button, and share the videos. Also comment on the videos, man. It helps out the channel a lot. If anything else, just throw a comment on there. Throw a comment on the show tonight, what you think of Curtis's takes, guys he threw out there, money, and who you want as a free agent that could help out this team in 25. So yeah, guys, that's it. That's it for us tonight. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.